Welcome to another episode of the Journeys of Not So Ordinary People podcast, your personal, professional, and career development podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Dr. Dave Peltz, and along with me, as always, is my esteemed colleague, Dr. Joe Hamlet. How are you today, Dr. Joe?
I'm doing pretty good, Dr. Dave. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. How are you doing, Dr. Joe?
We're not going to continue
No,
this.
no, we're not going to do that this time. So, for those of you who are listening in, you may not be aware, but we do have a guest speaker here today, Maya Carpenter. How are you doing, Maya?
I'm well. Thank you for having me, Dr. Dave and Dr.
You're
Joe.
You're very welcome.
Can you take a couple of minutes and tell our audience a little bit, our viewers and listeners, a little bit about you and your background?
All right. Well, my background is pretty colorful and layered, but I'm going to try to keep it brief. I am a speaker, former educator, former journalist. I have done quite a bit, but I also work as a HR director. So I wear many hats, but my main goal is to teach people how to navigate through rejection healthily. And I help them use social emotional learning tools to do that. So there are practical ways to get through it, but I do it in a way that I'm always pulling out my storytelling bag. So I have lots of stories to tell, considering my colorful background, as I've said already. But I use that to fuel how to help other people. So I fuel what I've done, the rejection that I faced through the years, to help other people navigate that as well. So I've learned to kind of package that and let people know that their story is not over and their story is just as unique as someone else's, even if they haven't been through the same situation. So I help people use empathy. That's very, very big in my line of work. So I have been in the business for, I may not look like it, but for about 20 years.
Wow. I
Okay.
think this is a
Wow.
good segue into our topic for the podcast, which is rejection as an ally. Um, so with that, Maya, you started to allude and throw out some little tidbits out there. What are your thoughts on rejection as an ally?
Well, I think when people hear that, they're like, how does rejection become an ally? And what I want people to understand is that rejection is going to happen. It's
Mhm.
inevitable. So it's not something that we can leave it to the side and not acknowledge that it exists. So in order to help people navigate, they have to change their mindset to understand that it's not their enemy. It's not their enemy, because they can move forward past that, past whatever rejection, whether it's relationships, whether it's a career rejection, or even if they're teens, because, a lot of teenagers are experiencing that right now. And that's very, very big right now in the education space, where kids are, experiencing rejection. So I'm letting them know that it happens. So that's my main focus, is to let them know that it happens. How we manage it is the thing. That's how we get through it, and that's how we make it our ally instead of our enemy. Because a lot of times we can get so um, just stuck in that. We can get stuck in that, and we let it take an internal approach instead of just allowing it to be something that propels us. So that's pretty much how I view it when I say rejection is our greatest ally, because it is, because we all face it, but does it keep us bound? It shouldn't. And so
Mhm.
that's my way of coming in and saying, this is how we do that.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, my
Yeah.
first impression when I heard that was like Dave said, how do you change that? Because we, like you said, we all go through rejection, but I, I I have never really thought of, okay, let's make that a friend though. I mean, so
Right,
I'm
right. Because it's a
very
mindset. It's a mindset.
Absolutely, yeah. So I just don't think that's my friend. We're gonna be buddies. So I'm just really curious to hear some of those
Yeah.
techniques on how to do that, because I again, we've
Yeah.
all experienced our own types of rejection. So
Yeah, like that, and that's why I try to infuse different stories to show
Mm,
people how you can navigate through it, using empathy, using compassion, and putting yourself in someone else's shoes, and even helping leadership in that way too, because oftentimes, people in leadership forget that they were once not in leadership.
right.
So I think I'm using both sides. I'm using people who have been through it, people who don't maybe not experience it as much,
Right.
as others, but it happens. And so my goal is to help people understand that it happens and how you can push through it no matter what's going on around you.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting that you said that, leaders oftentimes forget where they came from. And I think the same can be said about people who've been in their job or in their career for a long time and they're very good at it and they're just comfortable. I think
Hmm.
sometimes they forget where they've come from and that the new folks coming into the team, older, younger generations, whoever, are needing a little bit of that support versus, why don't you know this already? I do.
Yeah.
Well, it's like, well, yeah, you know it because you've been doing it for X number of years.
That's another form of it. And I think you bring up a great point because sometimes it can be very subtle. It doesn't have to
Yeah.
be
Right.
blatant. Rejection doesn't have to be blatant. It can be very subtle. And it could, someone could internalize that and take that and just think that that's just, this is how people are going to treat me, as if I'm supposed to already, know how to do this or what have you, or whatever the situation is. It can be so subtle and people can internalize that and it can become a part of their identity and they don't
Mm,
even realize it, so that's something that again I try to help especially our young people, because that they're facing it in real time, and
mm,
it I think now we have more tools to
mm,
to help people. But I think even when I was coming up, didn't really have that. Didn't also have the language for it. And so I think now I'm trying to help people have language to it, like to bring about something where they can communicate that to others, where that's the next step, not just saying, okay, yes, I've been rejected or whatever the situation is, but how to communicate that you've been rejected, how to communicate that you feel that, how to communicate that to someone else that you've experienced that, because that's a part of navigating. That's a part of not making it your making it your greatest ally is to communicate. Like you're not going to be fearful of it, fearful of that rejection because it can take on a mind of its own.
Yeah, I'm gonna jump in, Joe, because there's something
Okay.
I've been wanting to just you talk about communication, and I think that's awesome because especially in the in industry, you mentioned that you're in HR, and I've seen several HR articles recently that talk about some of the newer generations bringing in friends or members of their family to interviews and that sort of thing. And I find that interesting because that to me says a lot about the communication or lack thereof on understanding how to navigate industry and, being able to interview and communicate, your skills and experience and being rejected and knowing that that's okay. And then going on to the next interview.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that part though, and that I think even as you're talking about that, I think that's where it's I'll say my experience. I have experienced that on, where, I've had to go on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, which is why I'm able to at least address some of the feelings that go along with it. I think the first thing we do is we internalize it and ask ourselves, is this me? Did I do something wrong? Or
Mhm.
what could I have done better to have been the person that they chose? But as you were saying, they're choosing their family members to, that's happening, to be a part of whatever their organizations are. So I think that the best way we can, instead of internalizing it and making it about us and saying, what did I do wrong, looking at all sides and not just saying, is it just one thing, because I think it's natural to look at ourselves. It's natural to look at us when something happens. So extending that empathy even for them, not knowing what the situation is, but extending that empathy, saying, okay, well, I don't know what's going on that side, but I'm going to keep moving forward because I know that I still need to move forward. Like acknowledging that I still need to move forward in that,
Mhm.
whatever the job is that you're applying to, or whatever it is that you still have to keep moving. And there's something that's going to keep you going. And that's another way of navigating through that space. It's hard, it's challenging. I don't ever want people to feel like, or feel like that them feeling that way is wrong.
Mhm.
It's not wrong. It's what you're feeling. And we validate that. And you should validate your emotions and validate your feelings. But this is the way to extend yourself grace and to extend empathy toward the other person as well, because that's going to help you as far as your mind, you know?
You touched on something, and I just want to kind of hear your opinion about this. So, it sounds like you do a lot of work with people to help them accept those things and accept that it's not them and all that. But I'm just curious on the other side of it, and we touched on a little bit about some of these, rejections may come from just subtle actions or words.
Mm.
I'm just curious, do you help say leaders on the other side with helping them be more aware of that and how maybe their words hurt or maybe their actions might hurt. So I'm just curious what your approach is when you're trying to help them understand. Like
Yeah.
Dave said, they may have been in their role for 20 years, and so it's in the back of their head. They can do it in their sleep, but when
Yeah.
they project that to someone else, it comes
Mm.
off really negative towards them. So I'm just curious how you help people that are in those types of positions see that they may be, hurting people or, making it difficult for them to do their job or work. So I'm just
Yeah.
curious to hear that side of it.
Yeah, I actually thank you for asking. I have a ebook called Communication in the Workplace, and that's one of the
Okay.
biggest things that kind of press as far as leaders, because I
Okay.
think that's the thing that leadership lacks is communication. And communication, you when you're doing that, there's ways to communicate with your employees by extending grace, by extending empathy. And that's something that I do speak on heavily when it comes to communication in the workplace, when it comes to leadership and how they speak to their employees, and not to have a condescending attitude, and
Right.
approach it differently. So I provide approaches on
Okay.
how, like, giving them examples in the workplace. So if we have your employees, or if someone did something that you did not like, how do you approach that? Do you approach them by coming down on them, or do you ask them how they're doing? Because maybe
Mm.
they were caretakers for their
Right. Yep.
mother. Ask them that first before going into why they may have misstepped, or may
Right.
have made a mistake. So those are the types of like examples that I share with leaders to let them know that they're human,
Right.
you're human, and you need to provide empathy and compassion to the people that are working for you, because I'll guarantee you one thing, it will make them work harder for you
Right.
you know so that's one of the things that I try to emphasize with leaders when I'm talking to people who are in power and positions of power, that this is something that it has to be a part of your blueprint. It
Right.
has to be a part in order for you to see the progression of your organization. You might be the only one, in this position, but remember who's working alongside who's making this thing go forward,
Right.
who's running it, you know. And so I always want to emphasize that. So I usually start there. And
Okay.
my ebook, talks a lot more about it, communication in the workplace, because I know that that is a big thing. And just how you speak to people
Okay. Yep.
matters. Yeah.
Okay, thanks for that. Because I know me and David talked about this before with other guests as well. It's just
Yeah.
that is a challenge for a lot of organizations, not understanding that ineffective leader, the impact they're having on their employees.
Yeah.
It could make it could determine whether people stay or go, leave that
Yeah.
organization. So yeah,
Exactly. And I think when people hear rejection, they don't think, oh, this is, we can't have this in the workplace. We can't,
right.
this can't be a thing in the workplace, but it absolutely, that's
Yeah,
actually where it is. It's in
right.
the workplace, not just you not getting the job. Once you're in the job, you're going to
Right.
still face some rejection. You're
Yep.
still going to face some things. And I think people get, when they hear that word, it's like, oh my gosh, it's such a bad word. But the moment we release the fact that rejection is not something to fear, that we can actually get past it for
Right.
both leaders and for, those who are just, working, and have been
Hmm.
working for somewhere for years.
Yeah, you're saying so many things that really resonate with Joe and I. I like what you're saying about the rejection as an ally. It happens to all of us. It's going to happen, and embrace it, because that's really it's kind of akin to making a mistake.
Yeah,
You learn from your mistakes. You don't learn from your successes. So learn from your rejections is
yeah,
one of the messages I'm hearing, and embrace that as an opportunity to learn something to take forward instead of to hold
absolutely.
you down.
Exactly. And that's really the message that I want people to hear, that this is not supposed to be a crutch, not a crutch, but to make you stuck. It's not supposed to keep you stuck, So that's the main thing. And I try to instill that in all ages, because I feel like all ages need to know that, So I'm not just focused on one particular age group, but I do know, and one particular age group that does, suffer a bit more, just because of the world that we live in. So, yeah,
Well, I think challenge for or most of young people that are just coming into the workforce or just hitting those rejections maybe for the first time. I
yeah,
could see them needing a little more assistance with that because again we've all experienced it and some of us have learned how to cope with it, how to bounce
yeah.
back. But I think a young person coming into the workplace or coming into a newer environment,
Mhm.
they need a little more assistance, which will help them set them up for success because they understand how to apply that, like Dave just said, to help
Yeah,
them forward. Use it as a learning uh, situation, and to be able to apply those good things from it and go
yeah.
forward.
And it's interesting you said that too, because this morning I was watching the news and they were talking about this very thing about, students facing rejection and how
Hmm.
they're getting through it and how they're not getting through it,
Right.
and how a lot of the anxiety is being associated with that, where they're afraid of I guess friends, making friends with people and the friends rejecting them, and
Hmm.
just things like that, as well as you know people pleasing, because a part of that, and I talk a little bit about that too, because people pleasing is a part of that. Like as you feel rejected, you feel like you have to overcompensate.
Right.
You feel like you have
Yeah.
to
Continue to
be
work
a certain,
harder, push
you have to
harder.
work
Yeah.
harder. Yeah. So,
Hmm.
so a lot of, teenagers are facing that right now in school. And it's a big thing. So that's something that I try to help, with, so that they have tools that they can carry and strategies, because that's important, whether no matter what we experience, it's good to have some type of strategy or something in your toolbox that you can go to, get back on track, and
Right.
so that's what I try to instill in some way.
You said the people pleasing thing, and it made me also think of that as an avoidance tool. So
Oh
they
yeah.
don't have to be rejected,
So they don't have to
and
be.
it makes it look like they're a team player and they wind up, to your point, doing things that they don't want to do or
Yeah.
overburdening their workload
Hmm.
and putting themselves in actually a worse position.
Absolutely. I've been there. I am.
I've been there too.
Yeah.
I'm sure Joe
Yeah.
has.
Yeah. I believe we all have. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it is, and it's something that, it can be debilitating. It can, and I've been in places in positions where I was overwhelmed, and I because I overextended myself when I didn't want to do that, but I did it anyway because I wanted to please the other person or the other party. You know what I mean? And so
Mhm.
that is absolutely a part of being rejected too. You know what I mean? It's like that's a part of like having to release some of these things that come along with rejection, like fear,
Right.
anxiety, people pleasing, name something else.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, so can you give us an example of one of the things you might help some of the students with, when they face rejection or they are like we were talking about just rejection from a friend or potential friend. How would you go
Yeah.
about coaching them through that or helping them with that?
So one of the things, the first thing, acknowledge that you feel it. That is, and it sounds easy. It
Right.
sounds so easy to acknowledge, but some people cannot acknowledge that they feel that way because what it does, it makes them feel vulnerable. It makes them
Hmm.
feel maybe a little bit shameful for feeling that way, but I let them know to feel it, feel every part of it. If you need to cry, cry.
Right.
You're not going to be, shamed for that, for crying. So I start there, acknowledge that. Then I walk them through writing, writing it out, writing the thoughts
Okay.
that they're feeling, because getting it out is so important. And
That was what I was just thinking when you said that, getting it out of your head and putting it
yes.
somewhere else. That
Yes,
that
and
make
I
definitely
know
makes sense.
people exactly, and I know people. Some people are more, like audible, so maybe if they
Hmm.
want to have a voice note, whatever, if it's a voice note or if it's just writing a pen and paper on your computer, getting it out, that's what I want them to do is to get it out, acknowledge the feelings, however long it is, and talk about what it is that they are hurt by, bothered by, whatever is that's causing that angst, that's causing the that rejection, that feeling of
Hmm.
feeling not wanted or not worthy or not valued. And then I allow them to just kind of get into a space of putting themselves, and I know it sounds, crazy, but I start with empathy. I put them so put, because a lot of times that person or that party that rejected them, they actually have other issues too. So it's
Right.
also, you know what I mean? So it's acknowledging that they too have issues,
Right.
and then I allow them to get into a place where they can maybe not necessarily forgive them, but to extend a little bit of empathy even to the feelings that the person made them feel. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because
Hmm.
again, it's a process. It's not something that's going to happen overnight, but these are tools that they can use. And then I actually ask them a little bit about what they're after feeling what they're feeling and getting all that out, how how bad does it hurt not to have them as a friend? How bad does that hurt? Because a lot of times it's not the person, it's something else. It's something that's
Hmm.
rooted in, deeply that
Hmm.
maybe that there's a void. There's a void,
Right.
You know what I mean? And so if it's not, and they just really just want to feel valued, there's still something there. There's still
Right.
something because that person should not make you feel or should not make you feel any different.
Mhm.
I'm trying to get them to understand that that person cannot dictate how they should feel because it's a part of it's an emotional thing. And so we're trying to get past that emotional space because emotions don't have that emotions don't speak from a factual place. Emotions are emotions,
Mhm.
and so we want to state what's really going on
Right.
before that way we can process our emotions differently, and then we can kind of approach the situation differently and they can choose to go to the person to let them know it's bold, but they can choose to do
Right.
that. Or they can choose to move forward and recognize that this does happen and that they should not affect how they move forward. They should not affect how they do life.
Right.
So I take it from a standpoint of just a process. And
Okay.
as I'm talking about the process, it does not happen quickly. This is something you have to practice. It's something that you have to take in and you have to extend it to yourself and you have to extend it to the other person and vice versa. You know, just as you were saying earlier, what happens when it's the people doing the
Right.
rejecting,
Right.
right? Same thing. Same thing because oftentimes it's rooted in something else,
Right.
you
Yeah.
know.
Mm.
Yeah, you've said something, a couple things, several times it's really a soft punch in the face for me. That being empathetic and having grace. And I think so many of us, especially once we're ingrained or indoctrinated into whatever organization we're in, we start to lose some of that, and that's
Mhm.
part of our self that we're losing, not
Yeah,
part of our work habits or our expertise. And I think that's something important, because I think it's important that you're saying that, because if you're the rejector,
yeah,
maybe you need to be a little bit more self-aware and less callous.
yeah,
And if you are being callous and aware of being callous, maybe that's a protection tool for yourself.
yeah,
If you're the rejectee, again, like to your point, have that empathy and grace with yourself to say, hey, this is okay. I'm going to be all right. We just got to keep going and pressing forward.
yes, absolutely. And and then I think also too, now I'm not a therapist and I'm not a counselor and I don't try to do, I want to preface that, but I do know that there are people rejection can come out in so many different ways, and a lot of times it's associated with something else, causing them to
Mhm.
feel even more anxiety and then rejection sensitivity dysphoria comes in. And that's something that, a lot of people don't know about it, but it's associated with, how they view life. It's associated how they move throughout life, and it can affect them, it can debilitate them, and those are things that I think we would have to go further and go to counseling. So I think at some point that may have to take place. You
Mhm.
know what I mean? I don't ever want that to take place for people, but I know that it happens. And I know sometimes
Mhm.
you do have to get, counsel. You do have to get some type of, therapy to get past that, to get through it. But I'm coaching people to get through it. And I think there's definitely a difference in that, but I at least provide the space, for them to get
Right.
there. And if they need to make that choice to go further and get therapy or get counseling, then that would be the wise thing.
That's awesome.
Wow.
We've got
Yeah.
about 2 minutes left. So Maya, what bits of information or tools or tips would you like to leave with our viewers and listeners regarding rejection as an ally?
I just want to say that like rejection does not own you. It does not own you. It does not have to be a part of your identity. It does not have to be something that you wear as a badge of honor, and I think some people think about it and like, wait, how in the world? Like, no, it's the reason why I say it the way I do, because I don't want to give that word power to the point where it takes me out of my own path, the things that I know that I am purpose for, the things that I know that you're purpose for. So I just want to implore people to explore and not be afraid of the word or be afraid of what happens, when it comes to rejection, and understand that there are tools and strategies to navigate so that you do not become that rejection doesn't become your enemy, but it actually propels you to move forward and to reach where you want to reach, the pinnacle of where you're trying to get to. And yeah, I just want people to understand that it doesn't have to break them. It doesn't have to break them. And people can visit my website if they like. My website is Maya Carpenter. It's very simple. My name, and MayaCarpenter.com. So MayaCarpenter.com, and you can find me on all platforms: LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, to reach me if you want to learn more about what I do. And yeah. That's kind of me in a nutshell.
Joe, what are your final thoughts for today?
No, I just want to thank Maya for coming on and sharing this with us because, like we've all said, we all experience rejection,
Yeah.
and I think what a couple of things you said are very helpful is that identify that something injured you or hurt you in some kind of way. The sooner you identify that, the sooner you can start to move forward. So I think that's very important for people to know that, yeah, it's going to happen. And I think you said it early on. It's what we do after that is how we move forward. So again, you shared a lot of information, and I think will help me help others. So thanks for coming on to the podcast, and thanks for sharing your expertise and knowledge with
Thank
us.
you. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Maya, for joining us today for another episode of the Journeys of Not So Ordinary People podcast, your personal, professional, career development podcast. If you'd like to reach out to Maya in any way, shape, or form, well, I shouldn't say that's a little bit broad, but via professional contact means her contact information will be in the description for you to be able to reach out and get in contact with her. And with that being said, we're going to wrap the show up by the way we always do by saying we want you to continue being your not so ordinary